Welcome to Inflection Point, where we cover everything succession and exit plan related. I'm Kevin Conard, the CEO of the Retirement Planning Group. We are the dedicated fee-only 100% fiduciary firm that manages over $2.5 billion that falls under the Cetera family. And with me, I have my co-host today, Tom Saboto, who is Cetera's Corporate Development Director. If you're listening or watching this podcast is tailor-made for advisors that are, and we're out to demystify the concept of building succession or exit plans. We're here to explain how it works. We're going to cover the pitfalls and the things you can be doing to set yourself up for future success. Now, today I'm really excited because we have a very special guest with us. It's Angela Brill, who is the president of Prosperity Advisors. And Angela, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I know that there's a lot of people at Cetera that are familiar with Prosperity Advisors, but I thought in case some people aren't, it might be helpful to hear a little bit more about your firm and your role within the firm.
Sure. So Prosperity Advisors is located in Overland Park, Kansas. We have roughly the same amount of assets that you do under management. On the client side, about $2 billion plus. What probably sets us apart from other people is that we've got a really big OSJ. So we've got the largest OSJ in Cetera Advisors, and that essentially means we have about 150 advisors that we supervise, and total all in is probably $8.5 billion.
That's a very large practice that you're responsible for. So share a little bit more what your day-to-day looks like in your role within the firm, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm currently the president, and I'm an advisor as well. I wear many hats, but I'm essentially running the advice side of the house. So financial planning and advice, employer plans, and then the tax center. And pretty soon I'm going to be taking over the CEO role as our current CEO and founder is going to be retiring. So we've got our own succession plan in place.
And I think in a future podcast, I want to hear all about how you went about crafting that. It's very intentional, I know, and I think everybody would learn a lot from that. For purposes of today, though, I really wanted to bring this back to advisor-centric, and I know that you've done roughly, I believe, 8 succession plans, and 7 of those 8 were well-planned, timely, thought out. A lot of intent went into making that successful. I know one of them was a little more rapid. And, I thought we should maybe spend some time focusing on that today. So if you don't mind, let's dive a little deeper on that one advisor that had the more rapid event, if you will, that forced into succession.
Yeah, sure. Most, or at least the ideal succession plan is a planned exit, right? And a lot of advisors overlook the idea that there's an unplanned possibility. And so they kicked the can down the road thinking, oh, I got plenty of time. Well, luckily this advisor who passed away did a plan. He passed away of COVID, and it was very quick, within 30 days of catching it and passing away.
Wow.
Yeah, and he hadn't found the perfect match. He had been searching for the perfect succession plan. He was doing the right thing. Hadn't found anybody, but in the interim, while he was continuing to look, he engaged with Cetera in their Legacy Builder program. And so didn't think that was going to come to fruition, but it did. So it was the first Legacy Builder plan that executed. And so after he passed, we got a call from Cetera and we got a call from the widow. We knew her, and she knew other people in our community, and called us and said, both of them said, would you please take over this practice? We've got a crisis going on.
That'd be very tough for his spouse, his wife, to find herself in a position where, you and I have had previous conversations where she's grieving the loss of her husband, which was clearly not on the radar, and now has de facto inherited a business, so to speak, and has
in such a quick
clients.
timeline too, right? That happened really quick.
Really fast. And, the advisor was 50. He's got 2 small kids. The illness was kept under wraps because they didn't think it was terminal, right? And so the clients didn't know, the staff really didn't know what to do. And her having to step into this role at this point in time was particularly difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all wanted her just to be able to grieve, but instead she had to step in and be a business owner and had to figure out how to keep the lights on and the payroll going and the 401k funded and all that stuff that somebody does. And now it fell on her.
And the obligation to your clients, right?
Oh, yeah, the clients. What do you say to
Right.
the clients? What do you tell them? Who's in charge? Who's going to take care of them? Do they have an advisor or not?
So you get a call, catches you, I'm sure, off guard, or you're not anticipating this. This, I'm guessing, was around 2020 in the height of
It was
the pandemic.
actually January of 2022.
Of 2022.
So
okay.
COVID was still around,
But it was towards the tail
but
end.
it was towards the tail end. And again, I think
wow.
part of the surprise was that. But unfortunately, it was right when the 2022 market decline started happening too.
So you're trying to run the Prosperity Advisors, and you're trying to help out this family that has had to trigger the legacy builder component of the program. Tell me a little bit about what were the challenges with the staffing? What were some of the other challenges that you really never thought would be a challenge?
Yeah, the staff were young and inexperienced. The advisor really kind of ran everything. So they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to tell clients. They didn't even know what they were allowed to tell the clients. So, and obviously insecure. Do I have a job? Do I not have a job?
Sure, yeah. Do I need to go out and start looking?
Right.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Change. It's change, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking of.
One of the craziest things was that there were other advisors ready to prey on the practice. And so literally in the church pews at the funeral, other advisors were soliciting
Wow.
the deceased advisor's clients.
Oh, wow.
And they were also soliciting the employees, and in some regards soliciting them to take clients away from the deceased advisor's practice and from the widow, right, and what she would receive. And so you would be surprised at the amount of chaos and confusion
Yeah.
that happens at the time of an unplanned succession.
It almost sounds like the scene from the movie Wedding Crashers, where they were starting to go to funerals to, pick up the widows.
to take advantage of a
Right.
situation.
It's funny, but it's
real.
But it's real
Yeah.
in this side of life of running a business, right? Everyone starts thinking of, well, that's a shame, but wow, there's my opportunity.
Well, I'm sure, and I'm sure that I'm sure his spouse knew the employees, knows conceptually about the business, understands, at a high level how it operates. But were there issues with the details in terms of, accessing things? Was there any roadblocks that you ran into as you're starting to get involved with the practice?
Yeah, absolutely. She worked part-time in the practice, so she wasn't completely unfamiliar.
Okay.
But it's very much like our traditional clients, right, who are married, and the primary in the household passes away, the primary financial person.
Yeah.
And the spouse is left blindsided, not knowing what
Right.
they have or what the passwords are or how to get
Well,
into their
then
accounts.
most people today are using some sort of password protection thing, like 1Password.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, someone passes away, and then you're saying, well, how do I get into the 1Password, which has all the passwords?
Yep.
Right. There was a lot of that. There
Yeah.
was, how do we get in? What are the passwords? Where is everything? Even the bank accounts. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised.
So, were you boots on the ground? Did you fly a team there to assist?
Yeah, we did, because this was an out-of-town practice. I actually rallied a group of 6 advisors to come into this practice because it was in crisis, and because there is no way an advisor who just runs a solo shop could have handled that kind of load in that short of a time.
Well,
So
if you think about the
Yeah,
go ahead,
I was going to ask it, what was the experience for the clients, right? Because you had to start thinking about that experience for the clients in order to keep them feeling secure and confident of someone coming in during that horrible, moment of the other advisor passing.
Yeah. I mean, it really was urgency. Scale and urgency was a big deal in that situation because the clock was ticking. By the time we got brought in, 6 weeks had passed between when he passed away and when we
Wow.
got there. So it did take a while. Cetera kind of put a buffer in, right? They took over in the interim while they were securing the purchase and getting us in place to legally be able to take over as the owners and the advisors of the firm. But man, urgency was key.
I see this anyways. I'm sure you two have seen it, where an advisor in a specific area, it's a small world. They get to know some other advisors there. They maybe go to lunch once in a while. They're competitors maybe, even on the day-to-day. But they have this. Hey, tell you what, look. If something happens to me, we just kind of step in and take care of things. And you brought up something really interesting. I think that's often overlooked. Those mutual conversations that we're having, a lot of times they're with similar sized firms. This advisor owner has got 75 million and a bunch of clients, and they're just trying to keep it all together. And this advisor that's having that conversation, if something happens to me, has 75 million, a bunch of clients, are trying to keep it together. And for that other advisor to step in and do them a solid is impossible. Because they've already got a full workload, right?
Yeah, but that's only like a temporary fix, right?
Sure.
Because if it's another advisor who's going to step in and take over that client base, right? They're going to be inundated trying to figure out how to handle this many more clients, right?
Oh,
which could be a disservice to the current clients now, right? It's like, wow, well, sure, they assigned a new advisor, but now I can't reach that advisor. They're too busy.
Right. Or you can't take care of your current clients because now you're taking care of all these
Right. But in your case, you had structure, you had team in place, you had a business that was scalable enough to absorb and make sure each of those clients still had a personal experience.
Right.
Yeah. And go ahead.
And one of the things I think is so important on the success of that was technology, frankly.
Yeah. You guys were operating on similar systems?
Oh, we were. I mean, this practice, they actually did peer-to-peer sharing at conferences about the tech stack that they used with Cetera. We used it too. So when we stepped into that practice, we had the exact same tools. And the client saw it too. There wasn't a change. Whether it was Albridge, AdviceWorks, Money Guide Pro, MyRepChat, it was so easy. But if they were on a completely different technology platform, we would have been fumbling around like crazy.
So we have that experience. We stepped in for an advisor that knew he had a terminal illness and was literally 12 to 16 weeks. And we flew a team up to his town, and I won't say the town to maintain his anonymity, but we flew 2 advisors, 2 CPAs, met with all of his clients. And luckily he only had he had like 40 clients total. So it wasn't a big book, but totally different tech stack. I'd argue like zero tech. So, and it was file cabinets, and we're going through file cabinets to scan things and find old information. And unfortunately he did pass away, and we were lucky enough to be able to, get his clients in a new home. But these things matter when the rubber hits the road. And, Cetera does a good job. I really applaud Cetera in that they have a legacy builder program. There are a lot of companies out there who, whatever, we'll deal with it later approach. But I also know not everybody's approached and has a legacy plan in place. Mm-hmm. Tell us what it would have been like if the advisor didn't have a legacy builder plan, period.
Well, the wife would have been completely lost, right? How does she go find a buyer?
Right.
I mean, her practice would have, was shrinking by value.
Right.
Every day.
Every day.
And people would have been taking advantage of that. And she wouldn't have known how to negotiate. She didn't have her wits about her. I mean,
sure.
It's
a disservice to the family, right?
Oh,
right.
Huge.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Remember, for each client, right, there is somebody else within that household that's also a part of that client base, right? So the longer it takes, you have let's just call it a husband and wife or anyone who's a significant other who's saying, hey, so what's going on with our account now that unfortunately our advisor passed away, right? So they have 2 people who are trying to figure out, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the longer you wait, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
Right, and they start shopping.
Yes, and it's a lifetime's worth of work. And we'll wrap up here, because I think you've really given some, while it's a cautionary tale, right? The good news is they had a legacy builder platform in place. Like, that would have been catastrophic without it. Because I'm listening to you talk about the spouse having to go out and negotiate, find a buyer and negotiate. Like, that's hard enough to do when everything's working perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Then to put someone in that position that's never negotiated, or probably hasn't negotiated that much at that level, very few people have. That's going to be a very
Well, Kevin, I
traumatic.
want to go back to your comment about the similar situation you had of having to step in and acquire that other advisor's practice, right? But again, on both of these scenarios, I hear that you had a team, you had infrastructure, you had a methodology, right, that was going to work and make sure the clients became comfortable very quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know better than I, but I think in your situation, I think 99% of those clients are still with you today.
Oh,
because of that,
Yeah.
that method that you had to get in there.
Well, we had
And second, and this is not lost, right, in any type of situation like this, it's great to say you found a buyer, right? And hopefully it is the right buyer, but can they execute on their promise, right? Because in both of your cases, you had a health issue of an advisor that was involved. What happens if that spouse who is now taking over the business went through the process, and now 2, 3, 4 weeks later, the buyer says, "Oh, gee, I'm sorry, I couldn't come up
pull
with
this
the
the
money.
Yeah.
So, but it's okay. Let's restructure this, right?"
True.
Sure, right?
Yeah.
That's not great.
The advisor we worked with was still alive and could walk through the process. I was still talking to the spouse in the hospital because he was having tests run, and I was still having some of those same conversations, because you can't think about everything that needs to get done in those processes.
Right.
And it's just that much more imperative that everybody take this super seriously, because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this is a wonderful career where we help a lot of people out, and not helping somebody, and not having a plan is just not an excuse. Okay, we have to, as advisors, have a plan for the business. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come sit down with us, Angela. You shed a lot of light, I think, on what it looks like, and we talked a little bit about what it looks like when you don't have a legacy builder plan in place. And so I'm going to close here.
Well, Kevin, before you close, I want to wish Angela good luck, right? Because she's, as she mentioned, she's taking
on the reins of the CEO
taking on the
role.
reins,
Yes.
and she's got a similar situation, right? Because she's got clients who've counted on her for years, so she's going to obviously have to kind of put those into good hands herself.
Yep.
Right?
Which is a job.
So,
another
and
job.
Good luck on
Another job for
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So look, there are 2 ways to go about your own succession, and we talked about them. There's the planned, and then there is the unplanned. And I think it's important to remember that succession is going to happen one way or the other. I've said this before in previous podcasts. It is time to get super selfish. You got to start thinking about yourself and your plan, and your family, and your team, and your clients. I think Angela gave everyone listening to this something to think about, especially if you have 0. If you're concerned about how your clients and staff are going to be taken care of beyond your working career, and how you plan on monetizing this business that you spent years building, then I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to Inflection Point. Again, where we cover everything that's related to succession and exit planning. Thanks for listening today.